Father Paul.
Hey, I'm trying to get my thing set up here. Esther sent me a quick email. She said that she's too tired to do it tonight. She drives a school bus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes a lot out of her sometimes because when they make her do that extra thing at night, like a sport event or something like that at the school or a travel thing, she doesn't get in till late and she hasn't eaten.
Yeah. That's why it's nice being retired.
Yeah, but
Good evening.
Hi, Steph.
How are you?
Good.
pretty good.
You look comfortable.
I am.
Why not?
My seat. This is my place. It's my spot.
Oh, good.
Yes. Okie doke.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, Linda. So how you doing, Linda?
Good, thanks.
I'm glad. I'm still trying to build up my stamina.
Yeah, you look tired.
Well, the doctor wants me to do stuff like she said, press your limits in terms of exercise. She says, because when you exercise hard, she says it builds up your immune system and it builds up your strength and it does all these other things. You'll be tired as hell when you're done exercising. But she says it'll help in the long run. So I got a little carried away today. I left the house thinking about a mile. And I
Oh,
said,
my.
why not 2? And by the time I got home, I'd done 3 1/4.
Oh, my gosh. That's too much.
Way too much.
I do 4 every day.
In the rain, too.
Yeah, well, I had the dog with me, and the dog was for the first time letting me do a pace. I did a 20-minute mile pace for 3 1/4 miles.
Wow.
Almost that whole distance in an hour,
Right.
which was pretty good.
Yeah. Hi, Kay.
Hi.
Hey,
Hi.
Okay.
we're building up our numbers here. This is good. If no one's on YouTube well, actually, no, I have to leave the YouTube on because unless I run YouTube, we don't have a recording of it. And somebody else might want to come listen later. So I'm going to move my camera around here because
And
There we go.
Lordy. Okay, Lordy. I got it. Okay.
Well, I sent out the announcement to everybody again, so we can't say they didn't get an invitation.
That's true.
I was saying Esther said she can't be on tonight. She's exhausted herself from bus driving and all that. And so. Oh, it says there's 2 on YouTube. And if one's me, we have to have at least one other person. If you're on YouTube, could you please try and do a chat, do the live chat? and let us know who you are. That would be greatly appreciated.
Well, I checked in on YouTube. I'm seeing I see us five on there, but there's no chats going on to see if there's anybody else.
Mm,
Yeah. Oh, well. I think maybe people read the material and decided they didn't want to talk about sex.
That was me. I almost didn't come on.
Oh, no, don't do that.
I don't know these people.
You would die if you ever sat in on one of my premarital counseling sessions. Marital counseling, you expect that stuff, but premarital, most people does say, "Why do you want to know that?" And I say, "Well, I don't want to know that, but we need to discuss this so there's an openness between you two." No, we don't talk about that stuff. I said, "Oh, well, now it's time to start."
That's why they got a problem.
Yeah. But the one question that my premarital counseling couples hate the most is, who was your last meaningful relationship? And then I make them tell me how they met them, why they liked them, why they broke up, and we go through the whole thing. We do it for both couples, both people in the couple, and then as soon as they're done doing that, they say, "Now, what makes this person different than the last one?" And they get this look on their face like, "Oh my God." Because when they think about it, that usually there's a pattern. There's an attraction, a physical attraction. There's a thinking we get along together. And I just want them to think seriously about what they're doing so that they can have an honest acceptance of each other for who they are, and move into the relationship in an open manner, and not open relationship in terms of the marriage, but
Mhm,
open in their own personal relationship to talk to each other.
mhm.
And to discuss things that might be a little uncomfortable. And it actually works out pretty well. I've got my second degree is in pastoral counseling and family counseling. And so it helps a lot to be able to sit back and just ask the right questions and let them talk. And it works well. Now, marital counseling is a whole nother ballgame. Because we've already established the fact that they are together, and now we're trying to keep them together. Well, we hope. So anyway, it is now 8 minutes after. It's time to get started because I don't want to keep us up any longer. I can understand why Esther had reservations. Chapter 19.
Mhm.
The title is Using Love. The first question is, Screwtape displays his cynicism of God's love when he says he is one being. They are distinct from him. Their good cannot be his. All his talk about love must be a disguise for something else. He must have some real motive for creating them and taking so much trouble about them. Why is it hard for some people to believe that there is a God who is not motivated by anything other than pure love for his creation?
Mhm.
I'll ask it again.
Mm.
Why is it hard for some people to believe there is a God who is not motivated by anything other than pure love for his creation?
I think a lot of people in life have been, in a situation where they didn't get that kind of feeling, so they're comparing maybe God's relationship to their relationship with other people and other things. They found, they weren't in a situation where it was just pure love. It was kind of like a deal, I'll give you the love if you do, or if you want, or whatever. It's like a game. And so it's like a shock to find pure love that is just love for love's sake. And it grows and grows in your relationship with God.
Mhm. So what else? along the lines of what Screwtape said himself.
Mm,
What's he going to get out of it?
yeah.
You know, why he couldn't do it just because he loves. See, Screwtape separates the love of God from everyone else because
Yes.
God is spirit and we are not.
Mm,
And he can't see how there's a connection between the two that's valid.
mm,
God
He
says.
he can't see how God would love all us vermin, as he calls us.
yes.
Oh, you're good, Garrett Gay. I love it. That's right. You went all the way back to chapter 2 for that one.
I just remember that.
Yeah.
But that's good.
Yeah.
That's
know.
real good. Yep. God's real motive is God's real motive.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
But he says it is, it is. God does not deceive. Satan, he's the great deceiver.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
And he can't imagine anyone else doing anything unless it benefited them, as he does nothing unless it benefits himself.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to the next question. There are obviously those who, if given the opportunity, would choose to take advantage of others for personal gain. But if we are not careful, having a constantly cynical attitude will harden our hearts. And eventually, we will trust no one.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find a balance between healthy skepticism and hard-hearted cynicism?
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Healthy skepticism.
I think maturity helps because when you've, lived a couple of years and met different situations, whether it was your job or different people you've met at church or in organizations, you start getting a feeling for which pathway to, and you sort of sort it out and you figure out where the middle is, kind of thing. And you don't get hard-hearted, but you're a little cynical, but not that much. You trust, and sometimes maybe you trust too much because sometimes I think people take advantage of that when they think you're a very trustworthy person and they try to capture, some kind of a piggyback on that on you.
Yeah. What can we do to protect ourselves from abuse, still be open to loving our neighbor? Well, what did Reagan say?
You have to have good judgment for one
Right,
thing.
right.
Yeah, but what did Reagan say about the Ruskies?
Mm,
Remember what he said?
I don't remember.
No.
Trust. Come on, Pete. I know you know this one.
Trust. Yeah, trust the. Oh God, what is it? Trust your.
Trust but verify.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Trust but verify. In other words, you don't just take anyone at their face value.
right.
God, you might.
Right.
But anyone in our human realms, if someone comes up and says, I just lost my house and my car is being repossessed and I have no money in the bank and I have no food, and they're driving a Mercedes,
Right.
you might want to check into it,
Yes.
Yeah.
And some
use some
people,
judgment. Right.
Some people after a while, their pattern, whether they're real or not, and you listen and you listen to the story and it's the same story all the time, and then you walk away from it because they're
Right.
So if God says he loves us,
yeah.
we trust that, but how do we verify it?
Have faith.
Yeah, by faith, we just know.
What about another person? If another person says, I love you, well, you know what the boys do. Oh, honey, I love you so much. If. How do you know if somebody really loves you?
Judgment comes in here. Yeah.
Pardon?
I said judgment comes in here too.
Yeah.
Well, judgment comes in, but you what I'm getting at is you have to have a way of verifying. How do you verify love?
You see a pattern a person does consistently, is, certain things, and they're reliable. You can trust them, and it's, that they're telling the truth. It just is consistent, whereas some people, when you're saying verify, they're all over the place, and you can't, like you were talking about the example, they make up all these stories and they don't really live there. Maybe they want to live there. They want to be a rich person. They want to have a mansion on the hill, and lots of money. So you just have to check out. It's in different ways. You find out from other people what's real, or maybe you drive by their block and you find out, they don't really live there. Their name isn't on the mailbox.
Yeah, right, right. It's kind of like show me.
Show me.
Yeah.
We sometimes at church, when people help out with different events, there's a consistency of reliability, and they're always willing to do one more thing. And you just have the pattern over years of working with certain people. And that comes up when people serve on the altar, or they're lectors or ushers, and they know that you're shorthanded. They'll say, "Can I help you?" And, you just know that they will be there for you and help, kind of a thing, so you just get a feeling.
Love is verified
Yes.
by
Action too.
yes, that's the word. The actions of the individual. Now,
Right.
what actions do they need?
I'm doing good so far.
You're banging up tonight. So somebody open up to 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7.
Oh, all right. Let me grab my Bible.
Oh, I thought you were sitting on it.
Let
You get my Bible, she says, and she stands up and reaches underneath.
1 Corinthians 13, you said?
1 Corinthians 13,
Yeah.
verses 4-7.
7. I was thinking that maybe Kay was getting inspired.
I got it.
Go ahead, Kay.
Good.
No, I don't have it yet. I gotta
Oh.
find it.
It's the one you said last week.
Well, let's see if Kay can get it.
Yeah, I'll let Kay do it.
Because she was trying to get it, and she
Yeah,
was.
I understand.
Oh, no,
I'm
that's all
fine.
right.
I'm fine with it. Go ahead.
I gotta find it first.
Well, in my book, it's page 1000. I don't know what it is in your book.
Oh, it's different in everyone.
I know.
That's Chronicles. I want Chronicles. I want Corinthians.
You want to be in the New Testament, you got to go past Acts, past Romans.
1 Corinthians
Yeah.
13.
All right. Go ahead, Steph. You read it.
Okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful. It is not arrogant or rude. Love does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrong, but rejoices in the right. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things.
Right.
Now, that's
We
the
did that at
RSV
weddings.
translation, right?
Right, that is it.
Yeah, that's the one I would normally use at a wedding. However,
Yes,
the
we see
NIV is
that
our
at
second.
weddings.
The NIV
Yeah.
is our second choice, and it says love is patient.
Mm-hmm.
Love
It's
is
kind, right.
It
Right.
does not envy. It does not boast.
Well,
It is not proud.
mhm,
It does not dishonor others.
mhm.
It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth.
Mhm.
It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
That's just a different way of saying it. But
Right.
every once in a while, I like the NIV.
I like both because it kind of expands that thought, So I think both of them were nice to hear.
But that's how you verify.
Mm-hmm.
You take the actions of the individual and you lay it right up against that paragraph.
Right.
And if anything isn't in sync, at the very least, there's a a difficulty at that point.
Hmm.
Right,
They still love you, but they're not loving you properly.
yeah.
Hmm.
I think it's that's a good way of doing it. All right, let's keep moving.
Right.
Question 3, God created the human race in his image. Wait a minute, I'm reading the answer, not the question.
Whoops.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Sorry.
Good. Good.
Somebody turn to Genesis 1:27, and somebody else turn to John 3:16.
We know that one.
Yeah, that's the one that's in the end zone.
Yes.
I went back and listened to my sermon. I thought I did pretty well. However, somebody on Zoom had left their mic open. So anyone else who was listening to the broadcast, all they could hear was them
Oh, no.
the whole time.
Oh,
I won't say only. It was a competing voice. They could, if they
Yes.
really focused on what I was saying, they
Right.
could have heard me. But
we
I
had
felt really
that.
bad about it because it was a good sermon.
I agree. It was an excellent sermon. We had that one time on evening prayer. Somebody was on with us, and I don't know what they had on, but it was some competing noise in the background. Everybody said, "What is that?" And they said, "Are you all muted?" And everybody said yes. One person didn't answer, but then it got quiet. So I guess they got
All right. Well, let's see. Genesis 1:27.
right.
Somebody read that.
Oh, my. Genesis 1:27.
Genesis chapter 1, verse
So
27.
Right.
Okay. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created man. Male and female, he created them.
Hmm.
Okay.
God.
And John 3:16.
Right here on my card.
All over the world,
Yes.
begotten Son, that whoever believes in him,
You're right.
perish but have eternal life.
All right. So, according to these verses, why do you think God loves the world, and how did he show his love?
He shared his son Jesus with us.
Well, that's the second part. What about the first part?
That he created us to begin with, that he created the world and created us in his own image.
That's the key.
Hmm.
He created us like himself, to be like him, not to be the same as him, but to be like him.
Mhm.
And because he's done that, that all in and of itself gives him, and I'm using him because that's the pronoun I use,
Mhm.
but it gives him a reason to love the creation, because the creation is a reflection of himself. What does it say at the end of the great what do they call it? Not the Great Commission, the Great Commandment.
Golden rule.
About the three of the love is the greatest of all of these, but what is the first two?
Well, it's
Is that what you're
love the
talking
Lord
about?
thy God with all
Is that
thy
what you
heart,
mean?
with all thy soul, with all thy might, with all thy strength, and love thy neighbor.
As I said.
Yourself.
Ah, bingo. And if
Mhm.
God
Right.
made
What
us
was
in
I-
his image,
What was I thinking of when I said that?
I haven't the foggiest idea. Ken.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And love is the greatest of all.
Yeah, that's one of the readings. Yeah,
And
from
That's the end of Corinthians 13.
Mm,
That's the end of the chapter.
yeah, all right. There's
Yeah.
there's three things, and of these, love is the greatest of all.
mhm.
Faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these
Yeah.
Is
or
love,
if you
right?
read the
Okay.
King James version, it's faith, hope, and charity.
Mhm.
Okay.
Anyway, the reason God is motivated to love us is because he created us in his image.
Mhm.
We're part of him, or he's part of us rather. And he proves that love by sending his son to die for our sins.
Mhm.
God so loved the world.
Mhm.
that he gave his only son.
Mhm.
Number 4, Screwtape's perspective. What was the chief cause of our father's quarrel with the enemy? Now, that's in paragraph 2. What was the chief cause of our father's quarrel with the enemy? Somebody look up Isaiah 14, please. And someone else look up Ezekiel 28. I'll give you the verses later. Just find those 2 books.
I'll do Ezekiel.
Okie dokie.
I've got Isaiah 14.
Okay, 12 to 15.
How you are fallen from heaven.
Oh, no, wait, we're not ready yet. I just wanted
Okay.
to get you to where you needed to be. And Ezekiel 28 is verses 12 to 19. Got that, Linda?
No,
Find Ezekiel,
nope.
Old Testament.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Ezekiel's a prophet. As such as Isaiah.
Okay.
Ezekiel chapter 28, verses 12 to 19. While you're looking that up now, we'll start by listening to Stephanie.
How you are fallen from heaven, O day star, son of dawn. How you are cut down to the ground, you who laid the nations low. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven above the stars of God. I will set my throne on high. I will sit on the mount of assembly in the far north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High, but you are brought down to show to the depths of the pit.
All righty. What do you think that's talking about?
Well, I guess God, they're talking partly about us from heaven to God above us, because they're talking about dawn and the stars and the throne on high.
But it starts out, how you have fallen from heaven.
Right.
Who was that?
Devil.
Devil,
Yeah, Satan.
Satan.
This whole verse is about Satan. But you were brought down to the realm of the dead, to the depths of the pit. Now, what about Ezekiel 28?
I found it, but which verse?
12 to 19?
Okay. Son of man, weep for the king of Tyre. Give him this message from the sovereign Lord. You are the perfection of wisdom and beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Your clothing was adorned with every precious stone: red carnelian, chrysolite, white moonstone, beryl, onyx jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and emerald, all beautifully crafted for you and set in the finest gold. They were given to you on the day you were created. I ordained and anointed you as the mighty angelic guardian. You had access to the holy mountain of God and walked among the stones of fire. You were blameless in all you did from that day. You were created until the day evil was found in you. Your great wealth filled you with violence and you sinned. So I banished you from the mountain of God. I expelled you, O mighty guardian, from your place among the stones of fire. Your heart was filled with pride because of all your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. So I threw you to the earth and exposed you to the curious gaze of kings. You defiled your sanctuaries with earth and exposed you to the curious gaze of kings. You defiled your sanctuaries with your many sins and your dishonest trade. So I brought fire from within you and it consumed you. I let it burn you to ashes on the ground in the sight of all who were watching. All who knew you are appalled at your fate. You have come to a terrible end, and so you are no more.
Mm.
Talking about the devil, Satan.
Again, absolutely.
Yeah. Father Paul, aren't these words with all those stones, isn't that in Revelation also?
Oh, it's in Revelation, it's in Daniel, it's eschatological language, which is found throughout the Bible. But yes, it is also in Revelation. But now, in both these cases, Isaiah and Ezekiel, there's excuse me, there is scriptural text which says that God says, "I threw you out of heaven." Right?
Right.
Yeah.
What did Satan tell Screwtape was the real reason?
That he left heaven, that he couldn't believe the story that God created everything just out of love and for us, and that he voluntarily left heaven because he couldn't believe it all, that God just loved everyone unconditionally. He thought he had a secret, a real some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Some kind of like a plan that he was going to use everybody for, and he wanted God to tell him what it was, but there was no such thing. And he says he couldn't believe it, so he voluntarily left.
So the
And
quarrel.
if he could ever find out what the reason was, he would like to re-enter.
I'll bet he would.
Yeah.
But the point of it is that the quarrel itself was the difference in opinion as to whether he was expelled or whether he left voluntarily.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And that was a result of his disagreement with God's love. True.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is Screwtape's response to Wormwood on whether he regards being in love as a desirable state for a human or not? We're now in paragraph 3. Wormwood wants to know, is being in love is desirable a state for a human or not?
Right.
And what is Screwtape's response?
Well, he talks about leave them to discuss whether love or patriotism or celibacy or candles on altars or teetotalism or education are good or bad. Can't you see there's no answer? Nothing matters at all except the tendency of a given state of mind.
All righty.
To most
So,
of the enemy.
like most other choices in life, it's neither in and of itself good or bad.
Right.
It's the ability to corrupt and exploit the choice that matters for Screwtape. He wants to move the patient away from the enemy. And so whatever is going on and however it's interpreted, as long as it moves the patient away from the enemy, then that's what he wants. But to look at the idea of being in love, that's not a good thing, because it could be infatuation or it could be a lot of other things. But it's not a bad thing either, because love is a gift of God. And if you're in love, in real love, in a 1 Corinthians 13 love, then it's a good thing. But Satan will use that moment of emotional excitement to try and pull the person away from God by modifying their behavior, making their behavior self-serving, or making their behavior forced, or making their behavior something else. And so that's Screwtape's response to that. He says it isn't good or bad. As long as we can use it to our advantage, that's all we need to know. And it's the same thing with rich and poor, the same thing with sick and well, the same thing with all those dichotomies in our lives. It's not good to be sick,
Mhm.
but it's not always bad to be sick either, because sometimes it reminds us of our mortality, brings us a little closer to God, you know? God, please. Like I said in my sermon Sunday, I'm authoritative on that particular topic right now. All righty, what's next? Screwtape provides a couple of options for exploiting the patient based on whether he's an arrogant or an emotional man. The patient's character will determine whether being in love is good or bad. In the third paragraph of this chapter, can you tell me what an arrogant man is?
Yeah. If he is an arrogant man with a contempt for the body, really based on delicacy, but mistaken by him for purity, and one who takes pleasure in flouting what most of his fellows approve, by all means, let him decide against love. He's arrogant. Yeah, I mean, that means a lot of nothing, what I just read.
Well, no, it meant something. It says he's an arrogant man that decides against love by feeling distasteful for normal sexuality while creating an inclination toward perversion. Now, that doesn't mean any particular thing, but it means that what God gave us to be a loving, procreative bond between two people, we tend to pervert in our arrogance. You know, the guy that goes around keeping track of all of his
Conquest.
conquests,
Yeah,
or for that matter, the girl that keeps track of how rich each one was that she dated and what they bought her for dinner and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, right.
Right.
That's the arrogant person. And that immediately perverts love because it makes it a self-serving thing as opposed to a self-giving thing.
Mhm.
Now, what is the emotional man?
He's gullible.
Yeah, and he feeds on minor poets and fifth-rate novelists of the old school until you make him believe that love is both irresistible and somehow intrinsically meritorious.
His understanding of love is a romanticism that can never be reached.
Right.
Now, that's not to say that we don't have moments. I had a moment when I was dating my wife before we were engaged. She loved owls, collected owls. In our bedroom right now, we've got an owl lampshade, which is falling to pieces from 40, 50 years ago. But it's still something that we appreciate. We're going to find a way to decoupage it back into one piece again, I think. But I had found, if you think back, this would have been I think it was 78. Do you remember the nature stamps that came out?
Mhm.
The series of stamps about endangered species.
Right.
Well, they had one of an owl.
Hmm.
And I went to the post office and I bribed the guy behind the counter to give me the poster.
Oh, wow.
And I got it. And by the time I got it, though, my wife had left Atlantic City and was going back to Trenton with her mom in the car, and I think her sister too. And I was bound and determined to get that. So in my romantic moment, I jumped in the car and raced till I caught up with her.
Wow.
Pulled over on the highway and said, "Here, I've got something for you."
Yeah, that would be considered emotional, right?
That certainly was. Now, in the
Yeah.
moment, it was a giving
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yes, I wanted her to realize how much I loved her. Yes, I wanted her to acknowledge the fact that it was an effort that was well spent to prove that to her. But it was still for her because I knew it was something she really liked, and I knew it was something that would show that I've been paying attention to who she was and what she was like. That's okay. But the person who expects that kind of peak moment every time two people come together in a relationship
Mm,
is fooling themselves.
mm,
Right.
Because that's
Right.
not real life. That's not the way things happen. That's not, people aren't happy all the time. People aren't receptive all the time. People aren't responsive all the time.
Hmm.
You know the old thing about, I've got a headache, honey.
Mm.
But those things change. The person who expects it to be perfect all the time has deluded themselves and
Right.
has made love something that it's not.
Mm.
That's one of the reasons love is patient, because
Right.
things don't always go our way during love,
Yeah,
whether
yeah,
it's physical love or emotional love or love of family or anything else. It doesn't always go the way it's supposed to. And we must be patient to allow the other person time to work through whatever they're feeling or however they're acting or whatever they've understood a situation to be, so that they come around and again there's a sense of mutual understanding.
right.
And so the emotional man is the one who believes that the relationship has collapsed, that the love wasn't true if it isn't perfect all the time, and living up to the image they have in their mind of what romantic love is all about. And that's why they talk about what they read and it says, an emotional man, let him decide in favor of love by making him constantly strive for romanticism that is unfulfilled.
Yeah.
In this situation, the man would be continually and unsuccessfully trying to replicate that emotional and romantic feeling. This will lead to many adulteries, it says. Because they'll say, well, if this person doesn't care, I'll find somebody who does. I'll find that romantic feeling. I'll make it happen. And that's what happens. All righty, next one. If neither of those options work, arrogance or emotional, how is Wormwood to steer his patient in regards to marriage? It's at the end of the third paragraph. How is he supposed to steer him?
Towards
If-
to steer him towards marriage. A marriage is useful.
Yes, Wormwood is to convince the patient to marry any young woman from the neighborhood who
Right.
would make it really difficult for him to pursue his life as a Christian, all while continuing to produce the maximum misery and pain. I've known some relationships like that have come into my office. You wonder, how'd you make it 20 years anyway, and you're not bleeding,
There must be several young women in your patient's neighborhood
Yeah.
who would render the Christian life intensely difficult to him if only you could persuade him to marry one of them.
Yes.
And then he wants a report.
Yeah. Doesn't want much.
But what he does is he says, well, if the person's going to remain chaste,
Mhm.
if you can't do it through arrogance or through emotion, give him what he wants.
Mhm.
Show him a woman who's willing to marry him so he can have a physical relationship legitimately. Don't worry whether she's a Christian. Don't worry whether she's got a similar cultural background. Don't worry whether she's loving and doing this to give up herself to the other person. Don't worry about any of that. Just worry about, I gotta have a woman or I'll be sinning, and I've gotta have the woman now. Marry me quick.
Yeah. Yeah. He calls them raw material.
Right.
One way of putting it,
So
I guess.
that's the very end.
I
the
never
last
played phrases
words.
like that before.
That's his last
Right.
two words.
I see that.
Yeah, raw material.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter
Somebody look up
if
Second
they're-
Corinthians.
if they're healthy or sick.
Okay.
Doesn't, if they're old or young, it doesn't
Right.
matter.
Okay. 2 Corinthians. Okay.
Chapter 6,
Yep.
verse 14. whoever gets it first, go ahead and read.
Do not be mismatched with unbelievers, for what partnership have righteousness and iniquity? Or what fellowship has light with darkness?
I'll read the NIV. I like that. Also.
Okay.
Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? Now, that does not mean that you go to hell if you marry somebody who's not the same as you. In fact, that would apply if you're not a believer. It'd be crazy for somebody who doesn't believe to marry somebody who does and expect to have a relationship that's smooth where the other person accepts their position. Right?
Right.
I mean, if you sit there and you're saying, "Oh, there's no God," and you want to, and your kids, you have kids, and you start telling the kids, "You don't have to believe in this stuff. There's no way to prove there's a God." Remember what I was saying in my sermon Sunday? We're not supposed to prove it. We're supposed to believe it. And if you don't believe it and teach your children not to believe it, and you've got a spouse who does believe, or the other way around, the tension and the conflict is profound. Now, does that mean that I wouldn't marry a couple that was not evenly yoked? If they really loved each other and they said they were going to work on it, but I'd set goals for them before we even did the ceremony. I'd say you have to learn to do things like go to church together, even if you don't believe. Show your spouse support in what they believe and raise the children in a way which is in keeping with their faith. Because if you have no faith at all, you have nothing to protect. But your spouse has faith and has something to protect. And I'm telling you right now, 60, 70% of the couples that get married like that, there's a conversion, there's a confirmation, or a baptism, and they find out what real love is about and what it means to be married to a Christian person who loves sincerely and completely. And they want to be like that. And they end up finding themselves coming into the fold. So you don't forbid, but the normal logical suggestion to someone is don't go looking for somebody to love, just to love them, so that you put yourself in a position where you're in conflict for the rest of your earthly life. Not conflict because you want to be, but conflict because it's going to happen if you have that kind of basic disagreement in your theology and your philosophy. It'd be like a Muslim marrying a Jew. Yeah, and I'm not saying that to be nasty. I'm saying it's happened. I've seen it happen and I've seen it work, but it's rare because eventually one of them tries to force what they want on the other. And all hell breaks loose again. So being unevenly yoked is not advisable. It's possible, but it's not advisable. Okay. And so that's what Satan is saying. Look, if he wants to have sex, but he's too good of a Christian to do it before he gets married, find him a wife, any wife. Just get him a wife. Give him a reason to get married so he can relieve himself, and then he'll be in our camp. And it does happen that way. All right, last question, I think.
Oh.
Oh, no, that was the last question.
It was. What's our one sentence summary?
One sentence summary. Understand that the enemy does not genuinely love humans. I'll repeat that so you can catch up. Understand that the enemy does not genuinely love humans. And then parenthesis, but we don't know what his real motive is. End of parenthesis. One more time, I'll read it to you. Understand that the enemy does not genuinely love humans, but we don't know what his real motive is. End parenthesis. Just remember when you go back and look over these notes, it's from Screwtape's position. These are not the rules to follow. But that's a summary of what Screwtape was saying in that letter. Next chapter or next letter. Chapter 20. Oh dear. Title, Sexual Taste. First question, Screwtape chastises Wormwood for directly attacking the patient's chastity. Through his attack, what dangerous truth did the patient learn about sexual temptation? First paragraph. Screwtape chastises Wormwood for directly attacking the patient's chastity. Through this attack, what dangerous truth did the patient learn about sexual temptation?
That the attacks don't last forever. Consequently, you cannot use again what is, after all, our best weapon, the belief of ignorant humans that there is no hope of getting rid of us except by yielding.
Yeah, the brief way of putting that would be that the patient has learned a dangerous truth, that sexual temptation does not last, and that it goes away faster when it's resisted. So if you keep talking to them about their chastity, it begins to bring this thought into their mind. If I can just hold off a little longer, I'll be great. And they're right. If I can just hold off a little longer, you will be great. You'll have met your commitment to God. And if it's somebody that you truly love, you've met your commitment to them. Second question. According to Screwtape, temptation loses its power once God intervenes. What does 1 Corinthians 10:13 say regarding temptation? 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13.
I have it.
Go ahead, read.
But remember that the temptations that come into your life are no different from what others experience. And God is faithful. He will keep the temptation from becoming so strong that you can't stand up against it. When you are tempted, he will show you a way out so that you will not give into it.
Right. And I'll read my translation. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. Why do you think God allows temptation?
We're only humans.
Well, that would be a reason not to let us be tempted.
But you can learn from temptation too. You know, it's like they always say, you know, don't put your hand in the fire. You learn very quickly if you get tempted and you think, oh, that's going to be great. You know, you find out for yourself that it wasn't such a great idea.
Yes, I would have to agree with that.
Well, not all people believe things when they're told. They have to find out by doing it. And then they find out, wow, that was a dumb idea.
Yeah. In the book, it says, God will never allow a temptation or testing in our lives to exceed our ability through Christ to overcome it. Through Christ to overcome it. The problem with temptation is that we often do not feel like fighting it. We would rather give in. However, fighting the temptation is part of God's plan for us, and that involves trusting him in obedience. If we do this, he promises to always provide an escape. God allows temptations for several reasons: to help us learn to discern good from evil, to learn humility, to become more aware of our own weakness, to experience the freedom we gain when we overcome and to help us build character.
Mhm.
Okay,
Very true.
let's keep moving. What is the difference between chastity and abstinence? How can we effectively teach our children the importance of chastity and not just abstinence? Well, what is chastity?
Well, that's more of a concept rather than a fact. Abstinence would be the omitting it, and chastity would be a mindset of learning something as you grow up or taught something.
Okay, so abstinence is total refrain from sexual relationship.
No,
Right.
But chastity, before you're married, that it's abstinence.
Well,
Yeah,
Once you are married,
yeah,
it's an exclusive relationship. See, this is where Satan before was, or Screwtape before was trying to use that as a way of just get him married,
Mhm.
you know, because it's like getting the get out of jail free card, you know. Oh boy, I can do it now and I won't go to hell.
yeah.
And that goes for both genders. And that's not what God's trying to do at all. He's trying to help us establish healthy, loving relationships. And before you're married, it's very difficult to do that and be having a physical relationship and being bonded to each other in that very profound and powerful way. You know, you never forget the people that you have that kind of relationship with. When no matter how old you are, you could ask a guy or ask a girl, who was the first person you had made love to? They'll just pop it right off the top of their head. There's no way of forgetting it. It's intimate. It's personal. It's bonding. Lots of times you'll bump into a person that you've had that kind of relationship with years and years later. And even though you might not act the way you did before, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, we were really close. It's a shame it didn't work out. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
A kind of a thought, not necessarily that exact thought, but a similar thought. So by being chaste, which means before marriage to abstain, is a way of protecting yourself, your relationship with God, who indwells you through the Holy Spirit, and the relationship with your chosen mate for life, God willing, for life.
Mhm.
So it's not pure abstinence. It's just abstinence. Wait until it's right, and when it is right, make it exclusive to the one whom God has given you as your helpmate or your husband or your wife in life. That's what that relationship is supposed to be for. So, what does Screwtape say is a demon's best weapon regarding temptation?
What paragraph are we in?
We are in paragraph number 1 yet.
Oh, we're in one yet?
Still in 1. Letter 20, paragraph 1. Screwtape says the demon's best weapon regarding temptation is what?
The belief of ignorant humans that there is no hope of getting rid of us except by yielding.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what he wants. He says the best weapon is that people have such a difficult time rejecting temptation when it comes especially to physical or sexual relationships, that they just want to give in and say it's hopeless. If I just give up and maybe Satan will leave me alone.
Uh-huh.
I'll do what he wants. It's kind of like in wartime. They
Yeah.
would keep torturing and pulling people in and out of things that hurt, giving them physical torture, mental torture, all kinds of things. And finally, they just give up and do what they want them to do, hoping they'll just stop hurting them.
Yeah. Yeah. And this last sentence is, I suppose you tried persuading him that it's unhealthy.
Unhealthy, yeah.
It's unhealthy. Yeah. You're going to get sick. Your toe is going to drop off. Something's going to happen to you
Yes.
if you don't yield. If you're not giving in. Yeah.
All righty, let's move to the next question. We're now in paragraph 3.
We
According to
skipped over
Screwtape, there was nothing worth noting in 2.
Okay.
According to Screwtape, there is a demonic strategy in twisting sexual taste through the ages. He gives reference to past ages and to the current age of jazz. What
Yeah.
do you think is the ideal sexual taste for a man or woman in today's culture? And how does the media influence what we find desirable?
I think it depends on the age of the person because some of that still is valid. The age of jazz or waltz or whatever. I think the media tends to make you think that everybody has to fit a certain image. You have to, look a certain way and act a certain way. And they kind of overdo it. That if you don't buy this product or you don't wear that outfit or, buy a certain kind of perfume or makeup or whatever, you're no good. You got to be like this person who's the epitome of that of the ad or the commercial or something.
So what is the image? What is the image that we have today?
I guess, part of the image is anything different. People have wear different kinds of outfits and different colors of, their hair can be purple or green or orange or whatever. And just you're supposed to be yourself, whatever that means,
Tattoos.
Physically, what does it mean? Have you noticed any of the recent advertising for lingerie and for personal items and things like that? What the models are looking like?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Rather, I'll use a very nice word, Rubenesque.
Yes, right, soft.
Yeah.
And that's because they're saying it doesn't matter what you look like. You're you. It's not your fault. You can't change. Well, in many cases, they're right. But someone does not allow themselves to be unhealthy. I'm not talking about what their normal weight is or something like that. But you don't say, well, it doesn't matter what I'm like, so I'm going to eat 17 sausages and 3 cakes every day for the rest of my life, and nobody can say a word because I'm beautiful. Not quite.
You're not healthy, that's for sure.
Well, did you ever stop to think that health has a lot to do with beauty?
Yes, it
I've
does.
known a lot of people that are very beautiful. They might not be the skinniest person in the world.
Right.
They might not have the most gorgeous features in their face.
Mm-hmm.
But because they're healthy, they have a sense of self-assurance.
Right.
They don't have that fear on them all the time. Somebody who's really overweight always, at least most people, are always concerned about their weight and try and hide it. They wear all black, or they get one of those, what do they call those things?
I know what you mean.
Body formers or body
Yeah,
shapers.
body shapers.
The old ones used to be called girdles.
Oh, yeah.
A Sphinx or a
Spandex. Spanx. They
Yeah.
wear them in Hollywood when they're
People
going
have
to.
no idea how old I really am.
They don't eat all day when they're going to the Oscars because heaven forbid, they should gain an ounce. They eat a lettuce leaf all day and there's packed into those spandexes so they can get in these dresses that they were sewed into.
But then today's image, aside from those physical things, also has to do with our attitude.
Right.
This idea that Antifa is such a wonderful, great thing and that people are exercising their freedoms. And we should all be like that. Well, no. Or goths that mutilate their bodies and 7,000 earrings and all that. Jewelry's one thing, but self-mutilation is another. Poking holes through your tongue and putting slits through your belly button. And I can't say my daughter, at least one of my daughters hasn't done that, but I didn't approve, but they're too old.
Yeah.
They're older than 18. They're all older than 18 now. So I don't have too much sway onto that. But the things that they tell us in society to do and the way to act and stuff have nothing to do with godliness.
No.
Or personal care or care of another human being. Why would you tell your friend, oh yeah, go out and get a tattoo, pierce your ears, and all the other stuff they do. There's some really wicked, awful things they do to their body. Why would you encourage your friend and say, that's okay, it's your choice? Trust me, most people 20 years from now, most people who get heavy body tattoos, and I'm not being nasty because a lot of them are my friends, they're bikers and people I've known for ages. When they get the tattoo in the beginning, they're beautiful. They really are.
But they
They're
fade.
colorful, they're artistic. There's some very good things can be said about them. But 30 years later, when they're old,
60s,
wrinkled,
right.
and the colors faded,
Yeah.
Mhm.
my God, it looks like a bad cartoon page from the Times.
Some of my friends served in the service, and they have tattoos they got, when they were drunk somewhere on their arm or whatever, and you look at them and
Or
they
whatever.
what is that? They didn't know what they got. It was some back alley somewhere, so it wasn't even probably a proper needle. They probably have hepatitis or something.
Yes. All righty. But you get the idea, though.
Yeah, we do.
Society tries to set the norm, whatever it is. Even if the norm is no norm, society still sets it. We don't come up with these ideas all by ourselves. And certainly God doesn't put these ideas into our heads.
No, but we don't all have to go along with them.
We
No,
don't go
that's
along with it.
That's choice.
Right.
That's true.
That's when choice comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the end of paragraph 3, we learn that Screwtape seeks to make the role of the I in sexuality more and more important. If the role of the I, in other words, physical appearance, in sexuality is exaggerated, what will be its inevitable outcome? Should we discount physical appearance as a part of sexual attraction?
No.
Who said that?
No. No.
Well, of course, you're right. Of course not. You don't. That's one of the ways God has of bringing us together. Adam and Eve were young, good-looking studs and girls. And girls. Of course, they were the only two around, but that's beside the point. Supply and demand.
They didn't have too much to choose from.
But as you go along, though, and throughout all the stories and the histories and the things and the kings and all the stuff, attraction has a lot to do. Even when choosing the king of Israel, and David was a handsome, ruddy young man. Didn't say he was smart. Didn't say he was old enough. That he was a handsome, ruddy young man. That qualified him as king of Israel.
But I think our tastes change from, every so many years. That would be considered passé probably 10 years later.
Well, it could be, but no matter how you look at it, each person has a sense of what is beautiful to them or what is
That's
attractive.
true.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of the method by which we choose our mates, is to find someone who's physically appealing to us. And it doesn't matter whether they're heavy or whether they're skinny or whether they're tall or whether they're short. In all honesty, it really doesn't even matter what their skin color is. What matters is there this relationship? Is there this physical attraction, which is accompanied by a emotional attraction, which is accompanied by a spiritual attraction. That's one of the things that got my wife and I in the beginning. Some of our very first discussions were about angels and about visions I had had when I was young. And we talked about that for hours and hours into the night. And she would play the piano for me, and I would listen to her play the piano, and I would tell her the stories about some of the things that I'd seen and some of the things God had done for me at that point in my life. That's long before I ever got ordained. Oh, I thought you were my wife, PJ. You made exactly the same sound your mom does. I was going to say, what are you doing back from work so early? But anyway, there's nothing wrong with physical attraction. There's also nothing wrong with loving someone who is not physically attractive.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's part of the allure. The fact that you realize that love can go beyond those kinds of things to a deep emotional and spiritual relationship, which makes up for anything physical. Someone what about a soldier who's come back from the war without a leg?
Mhm.
Do you say he'll never meet anybody who'll love him? No, you don't say that. In fact, there's some, and again, I'm not criticizing it, but there's some girls who are so centered on caretaking and empathy and love that they look for somebody who needs that kind of special care in their life so that they can provide it for the rest of the person's life because they want to. They want to share themselves with them. They want to make them feel whole again. It's a challenge, but it can be done. The same thing with people who have other limitations, being blind or being deaf or any of those things. It's all part of the process.
Mhm.
Society sets the standard or tries to.
Mhm.
We as individuals have not only the right, but the ability to alter the expectations of society to what we believe are the expectations of God.
Mhm.
At the end of paragraph 3, we learn that I just did that, sorry. Screwtape says that each man loves a terrestrial and infernal Venus.
Mhm.
Describe these two imaginary women below. How would you describe the male version of each of these?
Yeah.
So what is the terrestrial Venus?
Is that the one that's coming out of a shell? That, you know,
Well, it's the girl or the man that they really want to marry.
okay.
It's their idea of a human being that they want to commit themselves to, that it will feel natural, even godly love towards that person that leads to charity, marriage, and mutual respect. That's a terrestrial Venus. That's what the person is looking for. Well, I can't say that's the only thing I saw in my wife before when we were dating. She was a knockout. Still is. What is the infernal Venus?
That's the one who desires brutally and desires to desire brutally, a type that's best used to draw him away from marriage, but which even within marriage he would need to treat as a slave, an idol, or an accomplice.
Yeah, the summary here says the infernal Venus is the woman he wants to gratify his sexual desire, such as a prostitute or a mistress, but he does not necessarily desire to marry her. However, for Screwtape, she maintains interesting possibilities as a wife, since the man would tend to treat her as a slave, an idol, or an accomplice. Now, what's interesting about those two definitions? isn't it possible for one person to fulfill both roles?
Absolutely.
The
Oh,
person you
sure.
love and want to marry, but who also
Absolutely.
provides you with the, if you'll pardon me for being blunt, the sexual release that you need in your life, the physical relationship that you need in your life. It's like when some couples, to keep things fresh and lively, will do what they call role play. And that's one of the ways that it's an infernal Venus. It's there's a sense of almost going out of bounds, but not, because it's your wife or your husband. And there's nothing wrong with innocent role play. I'm not saying that. If you get into the stuff that where people get hurt, or where pain is in given and things like that I'm not. I tell people they should steer clear of, because that's not going to work right. That's perverting the relationship. But if the husband wants the wife to wear a nursing outfit, now for me that's every day. So I don't have to worry about. Maybe I want her to wear a Catwoman outfit, you know.
Or an owl.
Wow, yes, a beautiful headdress. But the point is, there's nothing wrong with those kinds of
Yeah.
fun things in your relationship. What you have to make sure you do not do is make it so that without that the relationship cannot survive.
Hmm.
It's meant to be a distraction, a fun experience, an experimentation with each other as a couple. That's all okay. But if it gets to the point where you're not happy unless you do go the next step or the next level and the next thing and the next thing, eventually you will force yourself out of the relationship by default.
Yep.
And that's not what Satan wants. That Screwtape wants to see us focus on the infernal Venus. And he doesn't want us to realize that it can be done in a way that can be commensurate with the terrestrial Venus and allow for a good, healthy marital relationship. And he would draw them all the way to the extreme. So somebody look up 1 Corinthians chapter 6 again.
Got it.
Verses 15 to 20.
Oh, wait a
Read.
minute. I don't got it. I got two. All right. Read.
That's all right. 1 Corinthians
Yeah.
chapter 6,
Six.
verses 15 to 20. I thought you got that awful fast.
Yeah, yeah. Six. Why won't my page turn? Come
Hey,
on.
Peter, did you talk to Sue about that?
Well, I told her about it. I said.
What did she say?
You said to call her, or to call you, so.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure she was still on board, that's all.
Oh, yeah, she didn't absolutely take my head off when I told her.
That's a good thing.
Didn't absolutely take your head off, just loosened it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Did you find it?
We got it. Now we got it. Six. And what was the verse?
I'm sorry, I
15.
lost it all again.
15 to 20.
16?
15.
15 to 20.
15 to 20? Okay. Come on. Let's get some light here. 13. 14. 15. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ himself? Shall I then take the members of Christ and unite them with a prostitute? Never. Do you not know that he who unites himself with a prostitute is one with her in body? For it is said, the two will become one flesh. But he who unites himself with the Lord is one with him in spirit. Flee from sexual immorality. All other sin a man commits are outside his body, but he who sins sexual sins against his own body. Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your body.
Mhm.
That's good. All righty. One summary coming up.
Okay.
Don't give up if your direct attacks on his chastity fail. Don't give up if your direct attacks on his chastity fail. Try to arrange a desirable marriage. Try it again. Don't give up if your direct attacks on his chastity fail. Try to arrange a desirable marriage. Letter 21. What time is it? Does anybody got the time?
It's about 22 after 8.
We're not doing too bad. 'Cause
Just repeat that last, try to arrange.
a desirable marriage.
Okay.
All right, letter 21. This is called entitlement. Question 1, why would Screwtape suggest a strategy that involved darkening the patient's intellect prior to moral attack? That's pretty straightforward.
Hmm.
Why would he darken the patient's intellect prior to moral attack?
Distance.
Darkens his intellect?
That if the patient has time to process and apply logic to his situation, he might react with more patience and thereby produce a different consequence. Therefore, Screwtape suggests darkening the patient's intellect prior to the moral attack. That means, like, if you're in a room and you have something of value on one side and everybody else is on the other, and you want to see who's going to get it, if you want to make sure that they have trouble getting there, you turn the lights off, right?
Right.
You make it dark so it's hard to navigate the space. We're talking about an intellectual space. So you darken his intellectual, you cloud his thinking. Make it so that he doesn't see right away what's in front of him, so he can't avoid it or decide that he wants to avoid it because he's already on top of it before he knows it. You've gone across a dark room before, right? Banged your
Sure.
chin on the coffee table. Oh,
Hmm.
that's what he's saying, except as an intellectual exercise. Darken the intellect, cloud things up so they don't see what's going on, and they aren't going to get to where they want to go, at least not safely. What does Screwtape mean when he talks about people making claims on their own life? How do you respond when your plans are intruded upon? And why is it hard for us to accept that claims over our lives are not ours to make?
Yeah.
Says he will feel injured and as a result, ill-tempered.
Stop and think about what's going on today in society. What's the big thing they keep saying? It's my life. I'll do with it what I want.
Yeah.
It's my body. I'll do with it what I want. Right?
Right.
That's the cry of today's ungodly people.
Mm.
My body. I don't think so.
It's God's body.
Yeah. But we do. Or it's our own life, actually. I was giving you examples of how it expresses itself today, but it's my life. I'll do with it as I wish. What happens when somebody disturbs your plans for your life?
He gets irritable. He
Get
gets
irritable?
angry.
Yeah. What else?
You may want to do more than you originally had planned, just to spite those people.
That's possible. You might want to get some retribution on the person who disturbed your plans.
Yeah. Might
I gotta
avoid
tell you,
them.
as a priest, I deal with that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I walk into my office in the morning, I will have a written list of priorities of what needs to get done. I will sit down at the desk, I will turn my computer on and the phone will ring. And when I'm getting done with that phone call and hanging up, somebody will walk into the office, Father, I've got to see you right away. All right. Then somebody will show up at the front office saying, do you help people who need help with housing? And then something else will happen and something else will, and there have been days, and I'm not proud to say this, but there have been days where I feel like closing the door and saying, leave me alone, I have work to do. Because what will happen, just like Stephanie, she knows, I've been trying to get an article done for the annual report since before COVID started for me. One thing after another. COVID got in my way too. I was just as angry at it for doing that as anything else. Kept me out of church, kept me away from my work, made me irritable and with my family. It was terrible. When things interfere with your plans, you have to learn to deal with it
Mhm.
in a
Right.
in a humble manner.
Yes.
I had a professor in seminary, loved him dearly, loved most of my professors actually. They were good people. And he said that ministry is what happens between the things we plan.
Right.
We may plan a good sermon, we may plan a trip to a cemetery, we may plan this and plan that and plan the other, but it's what forces itself in between those plans and causes us to take a step back, to reschedule, to cancel things, to do all kinds. That's where the ministry happens.
Yeah.
That's where just look at the reading from Sunday. Jesus was taking a nice walk with his disciples, right?
Right.
And what happened? Jairus runs up and says, "Oh my God, my daughter's dead. Take care of it." And he says, "Okay." And he starts towards the door. Then a woman runs up and says, "You gotta let me touch your garment because I gotta get healed." He says, "Who did that?" Jesus was starting to get a little irritable himself. He says, "Look, can't I do one thing at a time?" We don't know what's going to happen.
No.
We can't plan who's going to need help. We can't plan who's going to have a death in their family or a contraction of the COVID or a disaster in their job or flunking a test, an important test in their education. We can't plan on these things. And when they happen, they happen. And our response to these people when they come to us and literally force themselves into our schedule must be like Jesus's, which was actually rather calm. Yes, take me to her. Daughter, your faith has healed you.
No,
No?
sorry, I had two conversations going on.
You have the nerve to disagree with me, Peter?
Yeah, no.
For each year. I had days like that in teaching too, Father Paul. I can remember that it was a snowy day and arriving at school thinking you were going to do your plans for the day. And so we had flu season one year and teachers were out sick. So forget your plans. They would take me out of the library and I'd go substitute I actually went from one classroom to another, a different period. Every period was somebody else. And then we had a fire drill or then we had a bomb scare. I mean, forget about about your plans. You just go with the flow, you know?
Here's an idea. We ought to have a fire drill during the middle of the Eucharist sometime. See how everybody reacts to that.
With the age of our parishioners, I don't recommend that.
Good thought, Peter. Good thought.
That's very, very true, Peter.
Uh, let's see what else we got here. Somebody turn to Mark chapter 5. Peter, you haven't read in a while. Why don't you do it?
Okay.
Mark chapter 5.
We've been in Mark and evening prayer for a lot this lately.
We have been in the first chapter of Mark for the last 4 weeks and probably for the next 2 in Eucharistic readings.
Right.
And we've been in the early parts of Mark since December.
Yes, we've been reading on evening prayer. We are actually up to Mark 6 tomorrow.
What chapter verse?
Chapter and verse. Chapter 5, verses 21 to 34.
Do this immediately, right?
Yeah, that's the one. That's the guy.
Ah, yes.
And when Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered about him, and he was beside the sea. Then came out of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name, and seeing him, he fell at his feet and begged him, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." And he went with him. What was that chapter? How far?
34.
Keep going. I'll tell you when to stop.
Okay. And a great crowd followed him and thronged about him. And there was a woman who had a flow of blood for 12 years, and who had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and there was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard the reports and touched his garment. For she said, "If I touch even his garments, I shall be made well." And immediately, there you go, the hemorrhage ceased, and she fell in her body that she had been healed of her disease. And Jesus, perceiving in a way that power had gone forth from him, immediately turned about and in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?"
Mm-hmm.
And the disciple said to him, "You see the crowd pressing around you, and yet you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what she had done to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease."
Powerful.
Mm.
Not many people get that kind of, either one of them, Jairus or the woman. Not many people get that kind of immediate response to their prayers, and that close relationship with Christ. It's possible, and there are people in this life and in this time who have experienced it, but it involves a whole lot. Like it said in the reading Sunday, you have to repent, you have to believe, you have to be open to the gospel and sharing the gospel. A whole lot of stuff. Not because God wants to have a checklist and say, "You didn't do this, so I'm not going to heal you." It's so that we know the avenue to be close to and walk with Christ in our life from this point on till we enter into heaven. In this passage, Jesus is interrupted by a synagogue leader named Jairus, who's seeking help for his sick little girl, and then it says, and almost immediately, he is interrupted again by a woman seeking help for a long-term illness. How did Jesus handle these unplanned intrusions? Well, we talked about that.
Mhm.
He did it
With
humbly
patience.
and gently and acknowledging the needs of the people that were coming to him in a real and reasonable way.
In OSL, those were two of our readings.
Yeah. Why did Screwtape say that the man assumes his own time, assumes he owns his own time and would be relieved if the hardest thing God asked him to do at any given day were to listen to the conversation of a foolish woman? Third paragraph. Why did
Like-
Screwtape say that man assumes he owns his own time and would be relieved if the hardest thing God asked him to do at any given day were to listen to the conversation of a foolish woman?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Let me just read what's here. God often asks hard things of us, like loving our enemies, forgiving the unforgivable, and serving those who make us feel uncomfortable. If all he asked us to do was listen to the ramblings of another for a little while, that would be relatively easy.
Mhm.
However, if we are honest with ourselves, we probably find ourselves in this situation every day, having to be attentive to someone or something that we do not want to attend. Our lives as Christians cannot be summed up in one day's work of listening,
Yeah.
ramblings of another. We are called each day to love those who we come in contact with, no matter the intrusion or how irritating they are. What was his name? He was a Korean vet, Wanamaker. Do you remember him?
No,
You don't remember Wanamaker?
no,
Oh,
sorry.
nice man, but the most irritating.
Oh, you mean at
personality.
church?
Yes,
Yes, Earth. Yes,
but
yes.
the most irritating
Yeah, I agree with
personality
you.
you've ever
Yeah.
come in contact with.
Yeah.
He used to talk about bringing a gun to church. He used to talk
Mhm.
about. He used to talk to the young girls in ways which were probably not totally appropriate.
Right.
He was. His heart was in the right place.
Mhm.
He wanted to be a good Christian. He wanted to come to church on Sundays. He wanted to be in the vestry or serve in the committees and do the things he was supposed, but he just could not get his act together.
Yeah.
It was the most, and you knew this, and so that made it even that much more irritating.
Yeah. You try to beat it out the door.
Yeah. Our lives as Christians cannot be summed up in one day's work of listening. We are called each day to love those who come in contact with us, no matter the intrusion or how irritating they are. That does not mean we become pushovers and do whatever is asked of us, but it is often the little things that we let cause the most irritations.
Mhm. I think sometimes the little things also make the difference in somebody else's life, and they remember that. They don't remember the whole circumstance and the whole story. They just remembered that one moment in time that you listened to them or, got whatever they needed, and that, for them was memorable. They forgot about the whole situation and what occurred, but they just remember that.
Yes. Next question. Somebody open their Bible to James, the Epistle of James,
Right.
chapter 4. Verses 13 through 17. James 4, 13 through 17. And the comment that goes with the verse says, as a Christian, why is having a personal sense of ownership of our time equally funny in heaven and in hell?
Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and get gain, whereas you do not know about tomorrow. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and we shall do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. Whoever knows what is right to do and fails to do it, for him it is a sin.
What other verse in one of the Gospels do you remember that talks about that? I don't have it in front of me, but I know what it is. Remember, we just read it about 4 or 5 weeks ago. The rich man looked at what he had and said, I have plenty.
Oh, yes.
Tear down my old barns and build up new ones,
Right.
and I'll be set for the next 2 or 3 years. And
Mhm.
what did God say to him that night?
Be prepared. Your life is going to change.
No, he was much stronger than that.
Well,
He said, you fool,
yeah.
tonight your
That's
life
true.
will be demanded of you. And who will end up having all those things and
Mhm.
spending all that money and
Mhm.
enjoying all your wealth? It's exactly what he said.
Right.
God doesn't pull punches when it comes to
No,
stuff
he
like
does
that.
not.
You fool.
Can't take it with you.
Amen. I always loved the little ditty about you. I've never seen a hearse with a tow hitch.
Yes.
All right. Let's go to the next one.
Okay, next question.
According to Screwtape, what are some arguments against chastity when considering ownership of our body? In what ways do you see this demonstrated in today's culture? I think we really covered that already, don't you?
I think so.
I do too. Go back to the other one that we were just doing on. What it says of our time, equality, it's equally funny in heaven and hell when we take personal sense of ownership of our things on earth. Why would heaven laugh at that? Why would heaven laugh when you say these are my things?
Mm.
Because they're not.
Not only are they not, but they know who gave them to you.
Mhm.
And they also know that there's even more, so much more wonderful and more valuable and more beautiful coming in heaven if we just can get our act straight down here.
Mm.
And so heaven laughs at that. They say, look at those people valuing coins and valuing that house and that car and that pool in the backyard. Well, my wife is still wants a pool. I don't know if she's ever going to get it. I don't think we can afford to do it, but I told her, I said, I'll compromise. I'll get you a sauna. Get you a hot tub.
Yeah, you can come over to my house.
Oh, God bless you,
It's
Peter.
nothing but work.
That is true. We have a pool in my village, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah. But anyway, heaven laughs at it because of that. Because it's like saying you don't even know what's really valuable. Why would hell laugh at you when you say that?
Because they figure you're a sucker for them, for hell.
Not so yeah, that and they know that what you've got can't come with you, and you're going to lose whatever you've got. Especially if you go to hell, you'll lose more than just that. You'll lose your soul. You'll lose your relationship with God. And they're laughing their heads off because if you end up going in their direction, you still can't take it with you.
Nope.
And the reward, so to speak, it's more negative. All right, let's go on to the next thing. Screwtape manages to go from ownership of my boot to
Oh,
my
yeah.
dog to my
Mhm.
wife and eventually to my God. How can this tendency towards possession be related to the sin of pride and idolatry? When we say my anything, what are
Yeah.
we saying?
Then we're more important than anything. We possess it.
We possess it, we have control over it.
Mhm.
So if they're my boots, I might say they're my boots, you can't wear them. I'm the one who has use of that stuff because that's mine.
Mhm.
My dog, what might we talk about with my dog? Come on now, you've all had a pet.
No,
Oh?
no, not a dog.
Well, my cat.
You could say, yeah, you could say
My
anything
birdie.
about anything about a dog. You know, my dog jumped on the couch. My dog ran in the kitchen. My dog ran away. But it's not the same when you're saying, my God, like
Well,
you're,
let's stick with the dog for a minute. We talked about my boots. That's easy. That is possessive, and that is
Yeah.
utilitarian. But my
Right.
dog is a little different from my boots, isn't it?
Hmm.
yeah,
Why?
your dog is something that you love,
Yeah, something that offers you affection
affection
and
and
a sense of
companionship. Right.
a sense of caring for the dog, and that you're responsible for its well-being. It's my dog.
Right.
You know, I don't want anybody else coming in and thinking they can just sit next to it and get licks.
Oh, you did? All right, we're
Where's
almost
your
done.
dog, Peter? Where's your dog?
But
Then
you
there's-
know what? She's been here by me all night except for now.
Oh,
She's
wow.
on the
He said, if
board.
you're going to talk about me, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
She heard her name.
Let's
Smart
keep
dog.
going. We're almost done, guys. My wife. That goes
She was
beyond
saying
my
that
dog.
with
Doesn't it?
affection,
I would hope so.
affection, love. Yeah.
My wife. That's the person that cares for me,
Uh-huh.
takes care of me, is responsible for me in terms of my care and relationship. I've seen men tell their wife, "You can't talk to any other men now. We're married." Well, that's
Mhm.
kind of dumb.
Mhm.
What if you work with men? What if we're at the grocery store and the guy's checking you out? You know,
Yeah.
I don't mean checking you out. I mean checking out your groceries.
Groceries. We knew what you meant.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Uh.
And then it goes eventually to my God.
Mhm.
What was the belief, and actually still is in most parts of the world? If it's your God and you know the name of your God, what does that mean?
You own the God.
You have control over it.
Yeah.
It has to do what you want it to do. That makes you the power. You become the idol, which is worshipped more than the God which you're referring to. And that's what Satan's working for. If he can start you off with my boots and work you through my dog and my wife and get up to my God, by the time you reach my God, you believe that because you know who the God is, you're safe. You've got control. You just tell him, don't let me go to hell. Take me to heaven.
Mhm.
And that's not the case. God's the one who's in charge. Oops, I'm almost done. Why does Screwtape say the word mine cannot be uttered by a human being about anything? Screwtape hopes to claim victory in the end. How is this different from our hope? Mine. it's possessive,
It will not belong to them no matter what happens.
right? Which goes back to the laughing in heaven and the laughing in hell. No matter what they do, if they really believe these things are theirs, my life, my wife, my dog, my house, my job, my vacation, my time. Not a good thing. And Satan can really use that because people believe that. If I worked hard and got the job and got the money and bought the house, that's my house. Don't you tell me that's not my house. Well, the bank still owns it. I don't care. It's my house. Or my car.
Mm-hmm.
Or for that matter, my children.
Mm-hmm.
That's Satan's way to get us. We idolize ourselves as being the powerful, possessive individuals who have control and ownership over the things around us, when the truth of the matter is we too could be sold, you fool.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow your life, this night your life will be demanded of you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Summary for this chapter. Ready?
Yes.
Convince him to use the pronoun my in the fully possessive sense of ownership. Parenthesis. Example, my time, my boots, my wife, my God. I'll read it again. Convince him to use the pronoun my in the fully possessive sense of ownership. Parenthesis. Example, my time, my boots,
Mm-hmm.
my wife, and my God. All right.
Right.
Somebody like to pray us out? No? All right. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
So with you.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, it amazes us sometimes that you know us as well as you do, and that despite our shortcomings, our possessiveness, our desires, our sense of being the center of the universe, that you still love us and care for us and want us to be in your kingdom for all of eternity. We pray, Lord Jesus, that you don't allow Satan to get the better of us, that you don't allow us to become subject to our temptations, that we never get to the point where we believe that we're in charge and that we own anything, but that everything we have is a gift from you and will eventually someday be passed to someone else. Bless us, Lord Jesus, as we prepare to go to sleep tonight, and protect us tomorrow as we rise, and do us a favor and keep the snow away. And I would ask your prayers for me tonight. I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow morning, and nothing serious, but it's always nice to know somebody's praying for you.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Connected to my diabetes.
Mhm.
But, and I will see you tomorrow, Stephanie,
Yes, you will.
around noon.
Around noon.
Joey Staggart will be stopping in somewhere between around 12:30, and we'll need about 10 or 15 minutes of my time. But
All
then
right.
we'll finish what we're doing afterwards.
Sounds good.
But we can get booklets printed for church.
Right.
We can get the
Mhm.
the annual meeting reports collated and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And I have to get my thing written before
Right.
tomorrow.
Yes.
So anyway, thank you everybody for being here
Thank
tonight.
you.
And I will see you later. And see if you can get in touch with some of the other people who used to be on with us. I'm not worried about Esther because she called ahead and let me know. But some of the other folks, see if you can touch base with them and see if they want to join us for the last couple of,
All right.
because we're on what? We just finished 21
Yep.
and they're 30, right?
30, 31, yeah.
31. So
I
we
think, I
have,
don't know. I just said that. I don't really know.
I don't know either. I didn't check.
Well, there's a preface.
Oh,
in-
Karen Tessa's with us. How do you like that? Was she said goodnight?
Oh, wow. Yeah,
But,
31, you're right,
was-
Kay.
that's
And then
good,
there's
I'm glad.
and there's a preface in the back, and there's some other additional.
Well, no, we're not
Yes.
gonna do all that stuff. What we're doing is 31, yes.
And then they've got Screwtape proposes a toast.
No. That's, everybody doesn't have that in their books. It's
Oh, okay.
a completely separate item.
Okay.
So we're going to go next week, 22, 23, 24,
Mm-hmm.
and then 25, 26, 27, then
I
27,
figured.
28, 29, 30.
February
And the last
13th.
one, we'll just do 31 and have a summary of what we've learned.
Yeah, that's February
Okay.
13th, February 23rd.
So, and what is Ash Wednesday, the 17th?
I think so.
So we'll be edging into Lent just a little bit.
Otherwise, so you could just add one more, because if chapter 31, might as well finish it on the 16th. It's only one more chapter.
Would you, I'll take a look at it. Maybe I'll regroup them so that we end a week early. I don't know that I want to do 4 at the end because I want to do a chance to summarize the book and
Right,
have
that makes
a
sense.
little question and answer time.
Yeah.
But, what was I just going to say? Oh, how many of you ever say the rosary or the Anglican rosary beads? Would anyone be interested during Lent of having a once a week night where in place of evening prayer, we would say a rosary of one sort of or the other? Would you like to learn that, or is that not something you're interested?
You mean like on Zoom? What do you mean at the church?
Well, we got to wait and see what happens. If
Yeah.
we'd probably be on Zoom.
Yeah.
But if they've given us clearance, we could do it at the church.
You could try it. I mean, yeah, I do have the beads.
Do me a favor, think about it. Let me know next week if you're interested, because if you are, I'll make it a scheduled event for Lenten time.
All right, but you need several people, not just me.
Well, I wouldn't do a program just for you, but I'd be glad to meet with you occasionally.
Of course. No, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't want you intruding on my time now, Kay.
That's right. That's right. And guess what? It's not your time.
It's
Oh, good answer. Good anscer.
God's
If
time.
it's God's
God bless
plan,
you guys.
you will do it. Good night.
Hey, Sue? Susan?
What?
She's here, she's listening.
Calling Susan Clark.
No,
Home.
well, no, don't call Susan back.
Hi.
I can't say, I like some Rex. Ask Susan to give me a call tomorrow, maybe around 1 o'clock at church,
Okay,
and we'll talk about that stuff.
she heard
Good
you.
night.
Alrighty.
Good night.
Good night,
Thank you.
Good night, Susan. Good night.
God
Good night,
bless you
Steve.
all.
Good night,